Welcome. Workshop 2 today, fully focusing on those essays, so those 22 markers. It's the same for paper 1 and same for paper 2. So everything we talk about today can help you for paper 1 and paper 2 in terms of your essay writing. And if you did miss our workshop 1, then the recording is there. Just head to the YouTube channel and you'll be able to see the recording there for all of them. I'll make sure all the recordings get there. So workshop 1 is there. If you did miss it, make sure you head over and watch that. It's nice to see some of you back, but for those of you who are new, welcome. It's lovely to connect with you. I'm based in Australia and I've been teaching IB psychology now for over 20 years, examining for over 15, and my own daughter graduated recently. Of course, she studies psychology. And I'm the founder of Diploma Insights, which is basically myself and a small team of other IB specialist experts who are really passionate about the IB and want to be able to support teachers and students in Australia who are studying it or teaching it. So we're here to offer support if you want any support with psychology or any other subjects as well. So we are focusing on the essays today, those 22 markers. What is it that's stopping students getting those 6s or 7s? And this is generally the one that's bringing students down. Sometimes they're doing really, really well in those short answer questions. And then the essay may be running out of time, which is why my first top tip is definitely planning. You need to allow yourself a good hour to do that essay. And before you start it, you really need to plan it out. So it might feel like a waste of time. You want to get started writing, but it's definitely worth planning. What are you planning on thinking, going to put in every paragraph of your essay? Now, it's good to even plan now in terms of your essays. What essay are you preparing yourself for paper 1 especially? So remember, paper 1 is your biggest weighting, whether you're a higher level or standard level. Have you made the decision on which one you are going to really focus on in your paper 1? So you have a choice. You're going to get a choice, a bio, a cognitive, and a social essay. You don't do all 3. It's impossible. You're just choosing one. So that means when you're revising, you shouldn't be revising all 3 in the same amount of depth. Some students like to do 2 because they like to have a backup plan. That's up to you. Or you can think, right, I'm going to fully focus on 1 and make sure that I could do the essay in bio or cog or social. But don't forget that you can get an essay or a short answer question about methods and ethics. So these are your subtopics from the bio and the cognitive and sociocultural. Ethics and methods questions can come up about any of those topics, any of those subtopics. So I've got an example there, and I really want to stress to remind you, don't forget to revise your methods and ethics for each of these subtopics as well. So in terms of planning, hopefully you are thinking about with your revision now, especially, what are you focusing on to prepare for those essays? Now, we talked about this in our workshop 1, recycle studies. Yes, you can use studies that you included in your short answer questions. If they're relevant, they can be used again in your essay response questions as well. And again, when you're revising, we talked about this in our workshop 1, try and use those studies that have got multiple areas that you could use for different topics as well. Now, the biggie then, command terms. This is so important, and we haven't got time to go into this in massive depth, but on the YouTube channel, there are loads of videos that I did last year for every day in September. I uploaded a different video, and there's a whole video that talks about the different command terms. So if you're looking for support with this, definitely watch those videos on the YouTube channel. The most common ones are evaluate and discuss for us in psychology. They come up a lot. But we do have 2 command terms that I've highlighted in red here that students feel they seem to be unfamiliar with. And when they attempt these essays, they don't tend to do very well in them. So you need to practice these. There's not many topics that can ask you to contrast things or to ask you to what extent, but they could come up in paper 1 or paper 2. My top tip is don't be caught out. Practice them now. And that doesn't mean write the whole essay out. Maybe that's just come up with a plan and show it to your teacher to get some feedback on would this be a good way to contrast, I don't know, like models of memory. Yeah, you could be asked to contrast models of memory, for example, in the cognitive approach in your paper one. Could you contrast them? What would you put into each paragraph? So don't ignore those two command terms. They're unusual, but they can come. So let's look at structure. How can we structure these essay response questions? What I tend to see is a very typical structure like this. We have an introduction, then we have some knowledge, which in this case, because the question is about social identity theory, the knowledge that the student is going to be showing is about the theory itself. So the color coding system here is green is getting you marks for knowledge and understanding. So we're looking to try and give you 6 marks for knowledge and understanding. So if you are describing the theory, and going into quite a bit of detail, I'm not talking about 1 or 2 sentences here. Remember, 6 marks. You want to be writing a good paragraph telling me everything you know about this theory itself. Then you can see usually we then get a study, and then we get an evaluation of the study, then we get another study and we get an evaluation, and then we finish with a conclusion. So this structure might look very familiar to you. The students scoring marks for knowledge when they talk about the theory. They're using research twice, so that's good. And they're getting a maximum of 6 marks when they do that. And they're getting a maximum of 6 marks when they talk about the evaluation, the critical thinking. Is this enough to do a really good essay and score well? For this question, this structure works beautifully because the question is about evaluate the research on social identity theory. So it's focusing on the studies, and this response, this structure is doing that. It's giving me a bit of knowledge about the theory itself, 2 studies, and it's really going to evaluate those 2 studies in depth, hopefully, to get 6 out of 6 for critical thinking. That's the pink part you see in this essay plan. So if you think about that, we've got an introduction, and then we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 body paragraphs and a conclusion. Perfect structure for this question. Does this structure work for every essay? No. Okay, so we're going to look at a different possible essay. The student would also, if they are using good terminology in their evaluation, score marks for knowledge and understanding in the evaluation. So that's your psych terminology here, those key words that you know because you've studied psychology that maybe other students wouldn't know because they haven't. So your classic ecological validity, internal validity, reliability, all those terms that you use in your evaluation, if you're using them correctly, you're also going to be picking up points for your knowledge and understanding because terminology is really important in that one as well. Now, let's look at a slightly different essay. This essay, same topic, social identity theory, but look at the question. It's not asking you to focus on the research, is it? So we need to have a slightly different structure here. So we can start off very similar, but what do you think that last pink box is going to include? Any ideas? What do you think the student could talk about in that last pink box to gain some more critical thinking that's relevant to the question, this question? What do you think? Any ideas? Anyone want to put it in the chat? What would you include in that last pink box to really address this question? And maybe you use a similar structure in your essays at the moment. What would you put in that last pink box? Anyone got any ideas? It's something to do with critical thinking because it's pink. Anything to do with pink is going to get you marks for critical thinking. But like, what would you talk about in that final pink box? Look at the question. What's the question wanting you to do? Okay, another theory, or as long as it's relevant to social identity theory, we could refer to another theory to help us evaluate the theory. Good. So the main focus on this last box is evaluate the theory, because what we've done in the other pink boxes is evaluate the studies. But the question really wanted us to evaluate the theory. So we really want to really home in on that. So yes, we could talk about other theories, which are maybe got better application than social identity theory and really can improve social identity theory. But we don't want to go off and talk about theories like social cognitive theory, which have got nothing to do with social identity theory. So you need to be careful. If you're going to bring another theory in, it's got to be used in a way to help you highlight like a weakness of social identity theory and not something that's completely irrelevant, like schema theory. That would have no relevance. There's no point talking about it. We'd be losing focus from social identity theory. Real world implications of this theory would be excellent to put into that last pink box. Yeah. So anything about the theory itself, the good, the bad, the not so good, the not so bad, the limitations of it, the real life implications of it, how it can be applied as well. Does it have high construct validity? Anything you know about your theories, you need to be able to include in this box here. So you can see how we need to include some evaluation of the theory itself. Now, there's another way you can do this, and this is what students are often not doing in their essays, which are asking them to focus on like a theory or a concept. So any question that's worded like this one, and it's like, oh, I need to do more than just evaluate the studies. To really score well, you need to also try and think about how you can link that evaluation of study one. How can you link that to the question? So if you're going to tell me that study one has a biased sample, for example, it was all, one particular gender from one particular culture, so it's a very biased sample. How does that link to social identity theory? Okay, and the same for your second study. Any evaluation that you talk about, ideally, you want to try and link it to the question. When remember, this question is about the theory. So any evaluation you put in there, it's really good if you can explain, does that support the theory or does it challenge the theory and make us doubt the theory? Or does it give credibility and really strengthen the theory? So in terms of our two different structures, you can see here, it's really important to read the question and think about what it's actually asking you to do. But ultimately, in all your essays, you're trying to demonstrate green, knowledge and understanding, yellow, research, and pink, critical thinking. So when you're practicing your essays now and maybe you're making your plans, think about these three colors. Think about maybe using highlighters to see if you're missing something in your essay plans, and maybe you're putting too much focus on yellow. Maybe you're focusing on your research and you're ignoring green and pink because you can only get 6 marks for each of these. So we need to make sure that we're trying to address all three areas. Okay, let's look at the alien. We talked about the alien in workshop one. So if you are completely confused about why there's an alien here, go to the YouTube channel and watch workshop one. It will all make sense to you then. But my alien is my reminder to make sure, and I tell my students that this alien doesn't understand your answer unless you clearly link it. Now, in essays, that means don't just list off like a shopping list, a checklist of different evaluation comments and then put a full stop. Okay. This is not good critical thinking. It might be correct. Maybe the study was gender biased and maybe the sample size was small, but this is what we call superficial, underdeveloped critical thinking that will usually only score you 2 out of 6 for your critical thinking. Instead, we want to try and do an approach like this. It's like a three steps approach. So here's a typical question that came up about ethics. And this was all about ethical considerations when we look at the brain and behavior. Now, to incorporate developed critical thinking, step one, you would state something that you think is relevant to this question. So you might choose to focus on protection from harm, and you might just state that it's a really important consideration. Okay? Step two, you go on and explain. So you could use any of these points here to elaborate and try to develop this critical thinking. But step three, you need to include to have this really well-developed critical thinking. It's all about linking your idea to the question. And in workshop one, we talked about you need to do this like in like 2 or 3 sentences. So you can see here my example of a link. It's 3 sentences long, but it's showing the examiner that I understand protection from harm. I know it's important, and I can tell you why it's important when we're looking at the brain and behavior, because you're going to link it to that question. So well-developed critical thinking looks like this. It's like a 3-step approach. So you need to take time to elaborate and develop your critical thinking rather than just listing it, which is what we would call superficial critical thinking. Okay, so think of these 3 steps when you're doing critical thinking. Any of these points could be elaborated on and linked to the question, and that would show really well-developed critical thinking. Okay, any questions so far before we move on? I'm just going to have a quick look in the chat. I don't think anything's come through, but feel free to use the chat if you've got any questions, okay? All right, so top tip 5, critical thinking isn't just about evaluation of studies. Lots of people think, oh, I'll just evaluate the study, I'll get 6 out of 6. Critical thinking is way more than that. So if we go back to this example, this question was a discuss question. It doesn't even want you to evaluate the research. And if you did that, if you start talking about biased sample, low ecological validity, it's got no relevance to ethical considerations. So we've got to read the question really carefully and think, what does it want me to do? How will I show critical thinking? And in this question, any of those points can be elaborated on. And you can see they're nothing to do with evaluation of research. There's no mention of evaluating research. But all of these points, if you elaborate on them, they will show critical thinking. So critical thinking isn't just evaluation of studies. Okay, it's much more than that. And depending on the question, you can show it in different ways. Yes, you can show it by evaluating research, but that's not the only way that you're going to show critical thinking. So like I said, workshop 1 is in the YouTube channel. There are 30 days of expert insights. They're quite short videos. You could just watch 1 each day now for the whole month. And then hopefully you've got even more insights to help you prepare for your exam. Now, don't forget, we've still got workshop 3 and workshop 4 to come up as well in September. You'll get your invites to those. And you can always reach out to me at insights@diplomainsights.com if you have any questions at all as well. I'm happy to help. So I'm going to stop the recording here. Thank you very much for joining though. And I am more than happy to also answer any questions, stay online and have a chat with anybody who wants to ask any questions.